Greetings and thank you. Thank you for checking out my profile. And my name is Catheryn Taylor. And before I begin, I just want to say how much I appreciate Metamorphosis Connections and what Laura Strong and her team are creating here. I'm just thrilled to be a part of this community. So as I said, my name is Catheryn Taylor, and what I bring to the table is 40 years of experience with working with first families and addictions. That's what I was licensed in 1979. And then that expanded into really focusing on working with childhood patterns. When I was working in the group home with adolescents, I came across a lot of childhood abuse. And that inspired me to expand my marriage and family therapy license to really working with the family within. And I crossed that line in 1991 when I published my best-selling book called The Inner Child Workbook. Now, that book was one of 5 books that popularized that concept. It's still around. In fact, I just got an email yesterday telling me that Romania is going to translate it. And that ends up being the 6th translation of this book. So it's been very popular. And the concept of the inner child is really popular, especially now. It's everywhere you look. And that makes sense because what we experience in childhood certainly gives us the platform for what we need to deal with in adulthood. But in my work, I take it even further. In 2001, I was trained on accessing the Akashic Records, which is the record of the soul. So how I've added that to my modality is not only do I see that the themes of our life patterns exist or were what I call energetically activated in childhood, they also serve as the portal for what our soul came here to work with. So how I use the Akashic Records is I access your records and we look at some pattern that's being exhibited in your adult life, and we begin to pull the thread. We see how it is interfering with what you want now. We see where that energetic blueprint got stimulated in childhood. And then we go back to the origin of that pattern in your soul. Now, I've also added the energy therapy of EFT. EFT is the method by which I help you process this information. So I help you get the context of what we're working on, and then we go back to each one of these places on your timeline. Because every experience we've ever had holds a vibrational blueprint or imprint of that experience, and we can go back on that trajectory and begin to interact with that part of self. Now, my latest work is expanding into really working not only with our inner worlds, but with the world between the seen and the unseen. And that was inspired by the passing of my brother John, who, after he passed, really invited me to continue a relationship with him. What I'm finding with that, I've been doing that for 2 years. We just published a book together because we co-wrote it, him from that side and me from this side. And we co-wrote it, and it's entitled, I Think I Like You Better Dead, which obviously is said with tongue in cheek. And what that book has really shown me, what that experience has really shown me, is that in order to not only continue relationships with our loved ones who have crossed over, but there may be real contracts like I had with my brother John to accomplish things. Also, it inspires us to raise our consciousness from 3rd to 5th dimension so that we can really begin to make access or take the opportunity to connect with our guardians and angels. So not only has this experience inspired me to stay connected to John, it's enabled me to be connected to a higher vibration of myself that has impacted every aspect of my life. So I'm excited to bring that work to the Metamorphosis community. Well, I have always believed in being able to have contact with those on the other side. That started quite young. But when my father passed away in 1988, it was really honed into me, the reality of this, because I had contact with him. But also that was shortly before I published my book. So I was doing a lot of seminars and lectures during that time. And what I found is that after a presentation or or again, a class, I'd have people come up and say, the whole time you were talking, there was this man standing right next to you, and they would describe Dad. And so that really concretized the fact that, yes, he was still there supporting me and that he had not gone anywhere. But 5 years after his death, he came to me in a meditation and basically said, we have to go back to this past life and heal it before I can continue. Now, that whole story is documented in a book that I wrote called Which Lifetime Is This Anyway? And that really shows the concept of multidimensional bleed-throughs and how that past life that Dad was talking about was interfering with my life here, and how it kind of framed who we were in this lifetime. So the next year was spent really healing that. And then I put that in the book. The story of Antoinette really talks about that lifetime. But before and after, I give a lot of information about multidimensional healing, which is basically what John and I are doing at this point, my brother. So that really sealed it. And then experiences with my pets certainly made me believe that. But also when I started doing the Akashic Records, I work a lot with people where they are trying to clean up things either in this life or other lives and in other dimensions. And so with the permission of their loved one that's on the other side, I will open the records of the individual that's contacting me, their loved one, and access the record of that relationship, because everything has an Akashic record. And so I basically do for people what I went to different mediums to validate what I was experiencing with my brother. Now, I couldn't validate that myself because it was too personal. I was too attached. But when I'm working with people like you, I'm not attached. So I can help you connect with your loved one by accessing the records of your relationship. Well, what a psychic primarily does is read your energy and give you feedback on what your situation is. In my work, I use the Akashic Records to give me that context. But because of my 40 years of experience in the psychological community and with adding the energy therapy of EFT, not only do you and I get the context of your work and where it is on your timeline in terms of where we have to target our EFT sequences, but I'm also able to help you process through that with the interactive tapping and then teach you and provide you with the supplemental material that enables you to continue that work. What I notice is that once people do kind of a block of work, I work in usually 3 to 5 hour packages, which is divided into 3 to 5 sessions. And once we finish that package, then usually people are familiar enough with the process, they've gotten kind of the threads of what they need to deal with. And then I provide you with PDFs, with tapping sequences, with audio recordings, video instruction on how to continue that work. But the beauty is that after that amount of time, we already have a relationship, and more specifically, I have a relationship with your inner child. And so then I often have people come back, and when they go to the next spiral of their work, they'll call and we'll do another round. So I try to really prepare you and equip you with the tools you need to move from point A to point M. But if you get stuck, then we jump right back in and I can help you get over that hurdle and then send you on your way again. So it's more comprehensive. What I found in this work with John and what I found in my own experience with it is that every tool I teach you, I had to use to work through my own grief, to work through my own doubt and my fear and my regrets so that I could hold a high enough vibration to even hear John. And that was a progressive evolution. It didn't happen all at once. So I had to continually clean up my work, and I teach you how to do the same. Well, as I just mentioned, the way that I access that broader knowledge and that divine intelligence of yours is through the use of the Akashic Records. And there's a sacred prayer that I use to vibrationally connect first to the Akasha field, and then by using your name and inserting it in the prayer, I connect right with not only your record, but what I call your record keepers. So I feel like I have a whole panel that are working on your behalf, not only to get the information, but also when we're doing the process work, I feel like my higher self and your higher self and our teams are working so that the words that come through for the EFT sequences, the tapping sequences, are so targeted towards your language. Sometimes I don't even know, the sequence of stuff. So I know it's not coming from me, that it's coming from your higher selves. The only cards I use are Jamie Sam's Sacred Path cards. And the reason I like those is because what we really have a difficult time doing here in human form is walking our walk and talking our talk. What the Sacred Path cards do is they teach us how to be present in a reverent way. And for me, that's what our goal is to expand enough to that fifth dimension so that we see through the eyes of our soul. But then our task, being in physical form, is to anchor that in so we are living from that principle as we are interacting with our day-to-day lives in this third dimensional world. And I'll talk more about that as we continue. Well, the way I will help you communicate with a loved one on the other side is first, we start with accessing the Akashic Records, and we determine what the goal is of the connection. In some of the situations for me, like with my mom, there really wasn't anything to continue. We had finished what we needed to finish, and often we would connect with each other just to see how we were doing. But that was much different than the story that I shared about my dad, where he came to me and we had a real agenda. John is totally different. Not only do John and I have a contract, and the contract was to write this book, but he and I are now involved in this partnership. He calls himself my ambassador. And what I've been assured of is that John and I are walking hand in hand now until I cross over to the other side. So that's a continued relationship with a purpose. What I have found is that those on the other side really want to connect with us. And you'll know who it is. You'll have inspirations. You'll be compelled to want to connect. And you may have unfinished business with people on the other side. So the first thing you and I would do is help you and your loved one to complete what didn't get completed. For you to say what you needed to say, for your loved one to say what he or she needed to say. Then we look at what the opportunities are. What I have found is because of my love for my brother and my commitment to wanting to continue the relationship, I was really inspired to work through all of the blocks I had in the third dimension. So how does that relate to you? I help you identify what your doubts are, what your regrets are, what your maybe your anger is, and I help you not only process that with the EFT within yourself and interact with the parts of you who carry those themes, but then I help you and your loved one begin to make peace, and I teach you how to do that. So I'm here to mentor you through your own disbeliefs that this can happen, your own wounds that would block it from happening. And once you have that and you're rolling, then as a mentor, I just help support you and create avenues. Like one of the things that I'm going to start is a support group where people can come and just share their experiences. So that's the way, as your mentor, I would assist you in this expanded relationship. What meeting at the veil means is that you expand your consciousness enough to be able to expand and feel the new vibrational signature of your loved one who's now on the other side, who's in non-physical. So what that means is we have to first grieve and let go of who we knew the person to be on this side. Now they still have some traits, But if we're still grieving and we're missing them being in our lives, then we're not going to be able to expand to hear their spiritual vibration. We're not going to be able to feel it. And so the litmus test for me with that, with the grieving, is that when I can talk about my loved one and feel joy about reminiscing instead of those pangs of loss, then I'm getting closer to doing that. So the third dimension is where we're having to do battle with all those dense emotions of sadness and despair and grief and blame and shame and the regrets and the betrayals. And we work through all of the unfinished business. And then progressively, we expand and we can move more into a harmonious relationship with our loved one. And at that point, we can determine what it is that we're meant to do with each other. So meeting at the veil is where we have cleaned up enough of that and we can begin to feel our loved one from the non-physical to the physical. Now that doesn't happen overnight, it happens progressively. And we have more and more experiences and then we collapse. Experiences where we expand and then we collapse. What I help you do is deal with the collapses. Find out who inside is still afraid to expand, who inside is still grieving, who inside is still angry. And so we clean all that up. At this point with my brother, I've worked through all of that. And so John and I really exist in the fifth dimension. He's always around me. I always have access to him. Now that was put to the test 3 weeks ago when I lost my pet. Now my pet was very dear to me. He was with me 24/7. And every aspect of my life was affected by the loss of Avery. But that's only been 21 days ago. And already I can feel that expansion with Avery in a way that my loss of other dogs, it took me 18 months to get over the absence because it was such a day in and day out, moment to moment relationship. For me personally, I let animals into my heart in a way that I never let human beings in, which is something my husband and I are looking at, by the way. But my point is that because of my 2-year relationship with John, by the time Avery passed and I had to help him go to the other side, it's like I certainly had to grieve. I certainly had to feel the loss, but the process was much different. And I could tell it was different because of my experience with John. And that's what I want to offer to you. And I want to offer this not just for you to have relationships with your loved ones on the other side, so that you can improve your relationships with those here. That's where my marriage and family therapy work comes in. And how you can improve your relationship with abundance and with career, because we expand our relationships to connect with those that we love, and that changes the game. We start living at a higher vibration. That impacts what we attract in our lives. So I'm very excited to work with you and to offer some of these skills to you. One of the things that John and I are offering off the top is a 2-hour consult where I access the records of you and your loved ones at the veil. So give me a call if you are interested in either the inner child work, the inner child soul work, if you want to do tapping for some block, or if you're interested in expanding and crossing that bridge from the third to the fifth dimension so that you can have whatever kind of relationship with your loved one you're destined to have. Thank you.